Alright, Jackson here, with what I guess is going to be my yearly plus update. I'm trying to be a little quiet because my roommate is probably trying to sleep. It's like 12:45 in the morning. Um, Anyway, I can't seem to be bothered to update this channel very often, and it's not because I don't have time. I have plenty of time. I just don't have a lot of motivation to update this channel a lot. It actually took me a while just to figure out what email address to log in with today. Um, but anyway, I'm gonna give a short list of events that happened in the past year. Um, Mostly medical visits, and then after that, I'll talk about some physical changes that I've gone through in the past year, and then I'll talk about some social changes, largely trying to get into the munch and kink community, um, and some other stuff regarding that. Anyway, the short list: I'm out of my parents' house. I'm living with a friend. I rent out a room in his house. I have a reasonably good job. I love the work. The pay is not terrible compared to what I'm used to. Um, I still get a lot of anxiety, although that's really improved from when I was living with my parents because they were a huge stressor for me. Um, my health in general is arguably better. The lessened anxiety is really a big help, but on the other hand, my blood pressure is worse. I'm on medication for that right now. Um, it's not working that well lately. It was working great, and then I went to the blood center for my secondary polycythemia that I've been talking about, and yeah, it's not so great anymore. So I probably need to get my dose changed, like moved up a couple milligrams. Anyway, I went to the emergency room and urgent care more times than I wish that I had. I had a nice major car accident last September, and it's been almost a year, and um, damn Raymond's insurance company still hasn't paid me for pretty much anything but my car. They totaled it out, although I still drive it. It's a piece of crap, but it gets me where I need to go. Um, I now have this problem where my neck constantly wants to crack both ways. It's very loud, it's painful, it gives me headaches. Um, so yeah, I had a neck injury that they still haven't paid for. Um, Thought that someone was knocking on my door. Let's see. I went to the emergency room because I scratched my eyeball one morning. Um, a couple of trans-related ones. First off, I had a hilarious physical for my current job. Well, my last job, but it's the same overall thing. So they wanted me to have a physical done through like this third-party medical establishment, and everything was going great. One thing about me is unless it's relevant, I do not disclose that I am trans to the doctor, because all that tends to do is make them do things like withhold care, because they're too chicken shit to work with somebody who's on hormones, a trans person anyway. I do say that I am on hormones, but they don't really bring it up, and I kind of think that they assume that I'm on it for low T or some other bullshit thing that cis people come up with. Um, so I go to this doctor. I don't disclose that I'm trans because it's none of her business. All she needs to know is my height and weight and etc. etc. Finally, it's almost done, and she's like, "All right, the next thing that we need to do is a hernia test." And I'm like, and she's explaining like, "Oh, I'm gonna have you drop your pants," and I'm like, "That's not gonna work for me." She's like, "Wait, what are you talking about? It's not gonna work for you." I'm like, "It's not. I know what test you're talking about. You're talking about an inguinal hernia test. It won't work for me because I am transgender. I do not have testicles." And she looked at me just, "Oh, okay." And that was that. Um, Obviously, she couldn't say anything to my employer at the time. Anyway, the second funny trans-related health care incident was I thought I was having uterine cramps at one point, and I went to the doctor, and he was just ecstatic that I was there. Like, we didn't find anything wrong. It was probably a function of my wheat allergy that hadn't been diagnosed quite yet. Um, and so Yeah, it turns out that he has a lot of trans patients who don't know where to go for hormones, and they don't know where to go for therapy, and so he wanted me to tell him where I had gotten hormones because he apparently never met a trans person on hormones before, which is really kind of annoying because I get my hormones from the same health system that this guy practices for. Um, and it's like you're a general practitioner. You have a lot of trans patients who are asking you about this, and you didn't think to like look it up. um, I travel a really long distance to get to my hormone doctor, but that's just because she's who I started with. I only need to go to her 1 year. There are like local doctors who do this um, in that area, which actually isn't that far away from my doctor. But anyway, I'm rambling now. My diet and exercise regimen is in a tailspin. I'm hoping that'll improve soon because there's going to be a Planet Fitness opening up 5 minutes away from my house, and I already have a membership that I don't use nearly enough. And that is the end of the short story. Um, Next, I'm going to talk about some of the hormonal changes, and there aren't that many, but they are still going. The first is that I'm growing more facial hair. Now, part of it is that at the time of my last video, I was actually sleeping with somebody who does not like facial hair at all. And so I was kind of trying to compromise. So I just leave some down here to help with the dysphoria because I found since I've had to shave myself entirely due to mistakes in recent memory, like it really kicks up my dysphoria if I have a clean shaven face. So I don't do that. Um, but I also was shaving off everything to the side and everything on the lip. So I don't know how much of what I'm growing now is actually new and how much of it I just was preventing from growing. What I do know is that I can now grow basically a chin strap. Um, and yeah, I'm growing like a tiny little mustachio as well. um, I can't promise that I'm not turning into a supervillain. I'll be honest, one of the reasons, other than the fact that I'm just curious, is that while I was sleeping with somebody who doesn't like facial hair, now I'm sleeping with somebody who really does like facial hair. So, um, I'd really like to continue sleeping with somebody. So, that's how that goes. Let's see. Uh, I do shave the patchy parts off, like the cheek here. I shave these two areas, and I also shave under here, so that I don't have like a mega neck beard going on, just enough to keep it going. Anyway, next are the community things, and I haven't really had that much going on community-wise, which is a shame because I actually moved somewhere that's very close to my normal stomping grounds. Like, it had been that I was driving like an hour and a half even, to get to things like pagan meetings, and things like that. And now I live significantly closer and I just don't go to them. And part of it's my schedule. I work 3.5 days a week, technically, but I get 40 hours, so that's like three 12-hour shifts, and then Wednesdays I have like these like a 4-hour day. Um, but I work Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, and those are the days that people want to do things. So I do get out early enough where I can go to them, but it's one of those things where I'm like, am I gonna wanna stay up that late? Because I have to be up at like 4 in the morning so I can get to work at 6. Um, so that's part of why I don't go out as much as I want to. Um, let's see. Um, Hormones have really changed the way that I navigate communities. Um, some of them it's not that different. For instance, my pagan community stuff it's hard to fit into my schedule, but once I do get there, it's not that awkward at all. Like I can bring up stuff because a lot of them knew me before hormones. Like those specific people knew me. And so either they knew me before, or they knew me after, but like knew everything from the beginning, and so it's not a big deal. Going to my alma mater for an event is really weird. um, so if I go to my old college, when I went there, I was the only out trans person in my LGBT club for the vast majority of the time that I was there. Um, there were a couple of transient trans people, so to speak, who experimented with it and then decided that it wasn't for them. There was like one person who came out during the tail end of my college career there. Um, Now I go there and there's a lot of trans people there. A lot of them are on hormones already. There's a big variety of different kinds of trans people, so like genderqueer people and all sorts of other non-binary identities, and so I feel pretty useless going there. While I was still at school as a student, I felt really valuable in a way because as um, the first out trans person that a lot of them knew, I had a lot of pull, and when new trans people did come out, I could help them. Now I can't. Like in a lot of cases, they're further along than me, and I've been out for over 10 years now. Um, so it's like all these trans guys who, and I'm gonna sound like a really old fogey. I recognize this, but I get this like kids get off my lawn attitude because I wind up going there and I meet, for instance, trans men who have been out for like 2 years, who have already been on hormones since almost the beginning, and who got top surgery almost right away, and it's just weird. Like that's not something that happened when I was their age. Um, and I still haven't gotten top surgery, partially because I can't bring myself to beg for money. But anyway, I actually did have somebody offer to loan me the money, but I can't handle borrowing that much money from a friend. Like, I just can't. Anyway, the most annoying thing, that's pretty annoying, but the most annoying thing, social thing, that I'm trying to navigate is the munch scene. And for those of you who don't know, a munch is a gathering of people in the kink and BDSM communities. And I was really excited about getting into that because I really like getting laid. And I was hoping that I'd go there looking like more moderately attractive than I did the last time I tried doing anything in person in this regard. And so I was really excited about it. But the problem is that our local community is really shitty. um, and let me just tell you how shitty this community is. So first of all, they're old, and I don't have a problem with that inherently. But these are people who are maybe like 45, which isn't old, to like in their 60s. And like that's like the average age is like people in their 50s who have it in their heads that they're like these really like super experienced BDSM people. Um, I found from befriending some of them on, say, FedLife, that um, they're actually like less experienced. I can hear my roommate like rustling around, so I'm trying to be more quiet. Anyway, they're basically like old, less experienced people. Not all of them. There are plenty of experienced people, but they also assume that anybody who isn't old is also inexperienced, and it becomes really frustrating. I'm not out there technically. I'm out in my FedLife profile, and everybody there is on FedLife. It's like a FedLife group. Um, anyway, so these people, they, now I'm distracted because I heard moving around. Um, and so, in addition to them being older, they're also like really heterosexist and cissexist without really being quite aware of it. So, like, there's a lot of bisexual people there, but they're in these really, like, heteronormative type deals. Like, there'll be, for instance, it's mostly women who are bi, in these groups, who are often in things like polyamorous groups, which is fine, that's great, but it doesn't really lead to, like, an overall queer friendliness. It leads to this weird, like, sister wife thing going on. But anyway, uh, they get really transphobic, especially at the play parties. And I found from talking to other trans people that this is really a common thing. That they'll be like, "Yeah, you can come to our munch, and we'll totally like accept you and everything." But then at the actual play parties, people are either really fetishistic. They'll treat any trans women like cross dressers, basically. Um, I get buffered from a lot of this bullshit, being a trans man, being on hormones, being, again, not that unattractive. Um, but, like, those policies still hurt me by sort of extension. Um, the biggest play party around here actually has a biological gender uh, bathroom policy, which is bullshit. And they basically did explicitly tell me that they would not enforce it for me, obviously. But the thing is, I don't want to be the exception to a shitty rule. It's still a shitty rule, and it hurts a lot of people. It would hurt a lot of people who are friends of mine, and they have the sense not to show up to stuff like that. But if they did, like, would I feel good about going there when they couldn't? Um. Anyway, let's see. Can hear more doors slamming, and I lost my place. Anyway, I keep these munches on my calendar, and I keep considering going to them every single time, but often I just don't bother, because it's not worth the annoyance of staying up late after 12 hours of work. Anyway, I'm not going to drag this video on any longer, because it's really unnecessarily long. It's like almost 20 minutes long, and I'm getting pretty tired. It's way past midnight. Whether or not I actually film another video in the next year or 5 years is really up in the air. I'm not going to force myself to do it. So happy trails. I may or may not see you next time.